Today we celebrate the solemnity of the Immaculate Conception, and so often I always like to clarify, because we get confused, especially with the Gospel we just read, that people think that this means that Jesus was conceived without any sin within the womb of Mary. Which is true, he was conceived without any sin within the womb of Mary, but that's not what the Immaculate Conception is. That would be the shortest gestation time in the history of humanity. December 8th to December 25th. No, we celebrate that, the Annunciation, on March 25th, which coincidentally just happens to be exactly 9 months before Christmas. What a shocker. Anyways, today the Immaculate Conception is rather about Mary being conceived. That when Mary, from the first moment of her existence, she was conceived without original sin, and she never sinned. That she never had that sin desire, that draw, that lure that we have in our disordered desires, which we call concupiscence, from the fallout of original sin. She never had that. She was created full of grace. And those words, full of grace, that the angel speaks to her, as we heard in the Gospel today, is saying, not just you're full of grace now, but you have been full of grace and continue to be full of grace. That she is filled with grace, and if she is full of grace, she can't be full of sin. We look at this and we say, who else was created full of grace? Which other humans were created full of grace? Well, Adam and Eve. But they sinned eventually. But Mary is taking on where Eve failed. Right? So Mary is the new Eve. Jesus is the new Adam. They are the beginning of the new humanity which we get to share in. And so Mary, as the new Eve, as the new woman, as Jesus calls her twice in the Gospel of John, says that Almighty God says that she must be free from grace in order for her to be a part of the fight against Satan. I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your offspring and hers. He will strike at your head while you strike at his heel. Traditionally, this has also been interpreted as she will strike at his head. And we recognize in the images of Mary and the Immaculate Conception as Mary that's crushing the head of the serpent, because she participates in the work of Jesus. In the second reading today, we hear about how we're called to holiness, that He chose us in Him before the foundation of the world to be holy and without blemish before Him. Now, on this earth, Mary was the only one after Jesus to be without blemish before Almighty God. But that's our destiny. What Mary shared fully in her humanity is the destiny of each of us. That God has called each of us to be holy and without blemish before Him. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, this means I know that I got a lot of work to do here on this earth. Because even though I went to confession yesterday, sin happens. I can't say that even with that I am without blemish 12 hours, 14 hours later. And so I have to keep going back to God and saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. But this is the beautiful thing, that God continues to work in us, and He's leading us in process to His heart. And we can look to Mary. We can look to Mary as our mother. First, to drive away and protect us from the power of Satan. This is the beautiful thing, that the exorcists out there have said that there's a big difference when they're doing an exorcism in when they invoke St. Michael and when they invoke the Blessed Mother. When they invoke St. Michael to come and to drive out Satan, he comes and he fights Satan to drive him out. But when they invoke the Blessed Mother, the demons flee from her. She doesn't have to fight. They just cannot stand to be in her presence, because she was so humble and gave herself over to God so perfectly. And so we can invoke our Blessed Mother, who is immaculate, asking her to come and to protect us from Satan. But we can also ask her, she who is the mold of Jesus. This is the image that St. Louis de Montfort uses, that when you're making a sculpture, you can chisel or carve out of stone or wood, and it takes a lot of work, and if you miss, you're really messed up. But if you have a mold of the statue that you want, if it's perfect, you can then pour the liquid in, and it will fill up, and it's a very easy way of making that perfect statue. And so Mary is the mold of Jesus. And so if we allow ourselves to be softened by Almighty God, we can then be poured into Mary and become the image of Jesus within our soul. She draws us closer to Jesus. She helps us to overcome our temptations and our sin. Because she's the image of what we shall be. The first human person to be fully without sin. And so we turn to Almighty God, asking Him for that help, that grace, through the intercession of Mary, that we may also be holy and without blemish before Him, that we may have the strength to follow Him, and that we may take on the Marian posture, behold, may it be done unto me according to your word, so that Almighty God can mold our hearts in Mary to be like Jesus.